Hi everybody, Kate Haley here, photographer and educator based in the Pacific Northwest. Hope you're having a great day. Today I want to kind of kick off a new series of videos about a variety of topics that I enjoy in the world of photography. And today's video is going to talk about creating cityscapes at night or just generally night photography. I wanted to share a few tips to get you started in this genre if it's one that you've been kind of curious about. Yeah, so let's dive in. So I like to call them cityscapes at night because I feel like there can be an artistic perspective on any of the work that we create as photographers. And to me, cityscapes just kind of sound like it's just a different way to describe doing an image of the city, right? It is a word that is commonly used, but I like that description of cityscapes at night over just night photography. So, have you done any photography at night or cityscapes at night already? Do you feel like you want to get a little better at it? For me, it's a genre that I've explored in my travels and then, of course, in the city that I live in. And currently, I'm based in Seattle. It's amazing to me how different our cities can look at night between the dark sky and the contrast of buildings and all of the hustle and bustle of the city at night, or the opposite of that, where the city maybe gets very quiet. When we think of a place like Pike Place Market, for example, in Seattle, it's extremely busy during the day, but at night that story changes. So I'm a fan of kind of going to places where the scene might be different or opposite and capturing what it looks like at that time. So here's a few tips to get you started though. First of all, tripod is queen or king, depending on what perspective you like to have. Having a sturdy tripod that is designed to hold your heaviest camera and lens combination is extremely important. My personal favorite brand is a company called Three Legged Thing. They're based in the UK, and I've had one of their tripods for about 10 years. And it's as solid today as it was the day that I got it. The key components to consider when you're buying a tripod is that it needs to be rated to hold your heaviest camera and your heaviest lens together. As well, consider the elements. How is it going to do in drizzle or rain? How is it going to do in different kinds of climate? How easy is it to open? How small does it close down for travel? Things like that. I prefer carbon fiber over aluminum because carbon fiber will tend to be lighter. Aluminum will be heavier. I prefer twist locks instead of clip locks because once you get sand trapped in those clip locks, they are harder to clean and you may not be able to clean them. So those are just a few things to consider when buying a tripod. If you currently own a tripod and it doesn't meet those standards, please consider getting an updated tripod. The tripod is designed to be stable, steady, deal with the conditions and all that good stuff. But if you have one that's not rated to hold your gear and it falls over, not only did you just lose a tripod potentially, but you also maybe damaged your gear. And our gear costs a lot more than that tripod. So investing a few $100s in a solid tripod is a really good idea. That's your first tip. Creating good night photography or cityscapes at night requires a good tripod. All right. The next thing we want to consider is having a lower ISO in our camera settings. Now, ISO does a bunch of things in our images, right? It's how sensitive the sensor is to light. When we push that number up, it can add grain to our images. Now, with the current sensor technology in our cameras, it's getting better and better, and we might not need to worry too much about whether our ISO is high or low. But for this, I'm also using ISO to take light away so that I can add light back in with shutter speed. So for me, I like to keep my ISO at the native ISO number for my camera. So my current camera, which is the Fujifilm X-T4, my native ISO is 160. For most of us, it's going to be between 100 and 200. So the first part is keeping a clean image. I'm going to be on a tripod. This is going to help me slow down the shutter speed so that I can get a long exposure or a more interesting exposure So keep the ISO low. If you're not sure what the native ISO is on your camera, just do a quick search on the internet. But for most of us, it'll be 100 or 200. If you're on Fujifilm, especially like the X-T4, X-T5, that's going to be 160. All right. So, okay, tripod, keep that ISO low. And the third thing that I love to recommend, and this will totally depend on your composition and the scene that you're trying to get, is I love doing long exposure photography with a wide angle lens. This helps me show more of the scene. It helps me see layers of interesting details and elements, perhaps have really long leading lines of things like car light trails and things like that. So for a lot of things, I will normally have at least a wide angle lens and then probably something longer. Depending on your location, you know, perhaps you go to Cary Park here in Seattle and you want to get the city skyline and have the Space Needle and those surrounding buildings. Well, that shot will require a telephoto lens to kind of get rid of some of the more distracting elements in the foreground. But wide angle can be a lot of fun. You can exaggerate things, you can get low to the ground and stretch things out. So it's a lot of fun. So those are a few tips to get you started in night photography, or as I like to call it, creating cityscapes at night. If you're curious to learn more, I do have an ebook on my website, and it's chock full of all of this, plus camera settings to get you started, a bunch of image examples, and tips on composition. So check that out. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave those down below. And thanks for joining me today.